Hello lovely humans, welcome to the top 5 worst tanks in World of Tanks Blitz, and ironically 2 of the tanks on this list are my most played vehicles. Times have changed a lot, haven't they? At number 5 we have the 183. Why? This is the ultimate one-trick pony. It can do one thing, and that is miss shots. Now, you might sure think, oh well, it has a great gun. However, the problem with this vehicle is that it's extremely and ultimately one-dimensional. You have a massive gun, you have 1350 hash alpha damage. If you hit that, great, you're in there. However, if you don't, your tank is now absolutely utterly useless, and you have a 20-second reload in which you can't run away and can't defend yourself because you have no armor and pretty bad mobility. So, you're very much a one-trick pony and a one-shot wonder at best. Now obviously, if you can achieve things like that, then that is amazing, and it can be somewhat fun, but well, it's more annoyance than fun, really, because I mean, with an enemy team like this, there isn't much to get anyway. However, everyone that plays the 183 should be ashamed of themselves, and everyone that peeks into a 183 should also equally be ashamed of themselves. Which means it's not more about performance of this vehicle, it's more about, are you dumb enough to actually peek this thing? If you are, congratulations, you screwed up. Now there's also a tank destroyer, which means it can't fully traverse its turret, which means it's locked there, and if someone gets behind you, you're screwed as well. And it doesn't traverse too far either, and here's the thing. You can do that, you can shoot 2 tanks at the same time if the HE splashes properly. However, overall, it's a one-trick pony. It's a derp gun. And like a T-49, it can be a lot of fun, but it just only does one thing. It does that one thing well, or it does not. It hits the gun of an AMX and does 0 damage, and that is what I mean. And that's why the 183 is on this list, because it's very, very limited in what it can do. This thing is either cool or shit, but it's more often shit. Number 4, unfortunately, my second most played tank of all time, the Grille 15. Now what happened to this thing? Well, they nerfed the mobility of it, and they nerfed the gun of it. So, that's not great at all. 600 alpha damage is bad for this tank, no doubt about that, because here's the thing. The less armor you have, the more alpha damage helps you, right? A Sheridan does great as a light tank because it has that high alpha damage, it doesn't have to peak a lot. It can move very quickly, 560, and you can run reposition. So, in a Grille, they nerfed the alpha by 40, which might not seem a lot, but it does add up quite a bit. And the problem with that is that while, yes, you can play it as a medium tank, the medium tanks are still better at doing medium tank things than the Grille. So if you play it as a tank destroyer, you do have very good accuracy. So do other tank destroyers. They do more damage, they are more protected, and some of them are even faster. Now, the Grille does have the half-traversable turret, which does come in handy sometimes, but obviously it has no armor. It can be HE'd by anything. And on top of that, you could use the small liner, but that takes away one of your slots, which is not great. So, I personally don't use it, because I know how to not get shot. However, the small liner can help it out a bit. However, it does not make up for the absolute destruction the Grille had to endure. And so did the rest of the line. I mean, the Borsig got both of its guns nerfed heavily as well. So, I don't know what Wargaming's problem is with this line, but they have castrated it quite badly over time. Now, ideally, you give it its 40 alpha damage back, you make it turn a little bit faster, and this tank gets back to where it once was. However, unfortunately, now, it's very bad. I definitely cannot recommend this vehicle under any circumstance, because obviously it's hard to play as well, given it has no armor, and it can be HE very, very easily by pretty much everything. Given that the HE on this thing isn't great, that's a bit bad. And obviously, 1,800 hit points, you have the same hit points as, let's say, an Object 140 or 62A, which doesn't help much either. So overall, the Grille is badly armored and badly disappointing. Now we go from no armor at all to armor in the wrong places. The VK72 is good at one thing: phase hugging. How many times do you do that? Well, very rarely. Now, the problem with this vehicle is that you do have an E100, you have a mouse if you want to play super heavies, you have a VK90 that is better at doing what this thing does, so basically, out of all the super heavies, even it loses against the Akpan's E100, which isn't even a heavy tank. So, it's not great. Because here's the thing, a bad tank isn't just the tank itself being bad. A bad tank means that it's bad compared to all the others of the same type or use of tank. Why would you want this when you can have a VK90, which does better at everything? This thing having not great accuracy, extremely weak DPM, obviously bad mobility, and it can't do the one thing it's supposed to be good at, and that is side scraping, because of that plate on the side that the turret sits on. So, if you know that, you can just shoot it there, and you can pin it pretty much every time. Now, the one thing I can do is face hug, because obviously the front armor is pretty excellent on this vehicle. But the problem is, same with the problem that, let's say, AMX M454 has. You can't keep every enemy frontal. And if the enemy is smart, that is exactly what they won't do. They will never engage you exactly from the front. But that is what this tank requires to make it work well. As soon as you get a side angle on this tank, you get that side plate, and all the front armor straight goes out the window. Now, using your excellent turret armor for gun depression things, that doesn't really work either. The turret's at the back, so you have to peek your entire front plate first. And your gun depression isn't great either. So, you have a very big sea of contradictions here with this vehicle, which is not great. And an E100 is the better overall super heavy tank. A mouse has the better armor aspect, or the better hit point aspect. And, well, not the gun, no. And the VK90 is better overall at everything. So, in terms of big super heavy, this is the worst that you can have. And that's what puts it on this list. Because why would you get the worst of a category when you can just not? Once upon a time, the Object 140 was the king of Tier 10. In tournaments, it was very rare to see strategies other than 5 IS-7s and 2 Object 140s. So, this thing was king of the hill once. However, now, it has descended into absolute irrelevance, and this vehicle is my most played tank in Wot Blitz. However, I'm putting this on here because since I started playing this vehicle, it went from all the way to the top to all the way at the bottom. What does this tank have that you cannot get with another tank? There are always a tank that is better. If you look at every single way of playing the Object 140, there is always a vehicle that does it better. You want mobility? Leopard does it better. Gun depression doesn't have any. 121 does it better. You have a gun. Literally all of them do it better because the alpha damage on this thing is extremely low and only 310. Which is also a pretty big downside. You have the lowest alpha damage and miserable armor. And while your gun's pretty good, it's nowhere near that of a Leopard. So, you basically have Leopard class armor without Leopard class gun and mobility. That's not great now, is it? So, you can still get something out of this vehicle. If you are an enthusiast of tanks and you want a challenge, then this thing can be pretty good at that, right? Because it doesn't have a lot of features to surprise you with. However, the overall package can still hold up decently if you know what you're doing with it. Now, overall, I wouldn't recommend this tank at all anymore because everything else is better. Well, almost everything else. Almost everything else. We'll get to that later. So, at this point, the Object 140 is very sad. And it's very disappointing. It is my most played tank, but there is no other option than putting it on this list because of how far it actually has fallen. And there is a reason why these old tanks are down here. Because of power creep. Why would you play the new tank when it's the same as the old tank, right? There is no reason to do that. Which means the new tank is always going to be better than the old tank. Make a bigger incentive for you to buy it so that it's actually maybe worth buying it. And that is what kills all the older tanks if they're not kept up and on their standard. The Object 140 got nerfed massively with the reduction in turret armor. So, not only has there been new tanks introduced that do everything better, but it also has been castrated as well. And that is very, very disappointing. And it is very sad to see the Object 140 be absolutely ruined like that. And there is one, however, that Not even the Object 140 can beat in crapness. Or because, in fact, the Object 140 has fallen very far, but not this far. This vehicle, it was always crap since it came out. The MX-30B. Would you want to pay real money? Money that you earned, or got from your parents. Would you really pay that money to get the shitty cobbled together version of the STB-1 and Leopard that can't do what either of the two can do? Well, that's the MX-30B for you. It can't go hull down because of the massive cupola like an STB, and it isn't fast enough or has a good gun like the Leopard. It only has 2,800 DPM. In the standard configuration, you can get up to 3,000 if you want. So, that's not good. Basically, what you have here is you have everything that is bad about every tank. You add a little bit of extra mobility on it because obviously it weighs nothing because it has no armor. And you end up with the MX-30B. And now you are asked to pay for it with real money. Which is a bit of an overstatement, is it? And look at that, there's the STB, it actually has armor. This thing doesn't. Well, it does have armor in the sense of the Leopard has armor, as in if you're dumb enough to hit at to shoot the gun mantlet or a very angled plate, it can still bounce. However, in a realistic term of where the enemy can actually aim and knows what to do, they will always find a spot to penetrate this vehicle, given they hit it, because RNG. Now, you might look at the mobility and be like, yeah, but it's fast and it's a challenge and stuff like that. Yeah, but you could just get the Leopard and not pay for it. You can get the Leopard free. Or get any of the light tanks that can do the same. So, that even have better camera rating. And see, that's the point with this vehicle. You have to pay for something to always have a disadvantage, no matter where you go, no matter where you look. Each and every tier 10 medium tank is better at doing what the MX-30B does. Even the Object 140 because it's free. So, well, technically you still have to grind for it, but T-54 is alright, so there's that. And the 62A does hold up quite well, but, you know. So at this point, you have a vehicle that can't do shit. Now, does that mean that it is absolutely horribly unplayably bad? Well, not really, because in the end, it's always 80% the player, 20% the tank. If you give a horrible player a smasher, they're gonna do nothing. If you give a great player a piece of crap like an STG, they're still gonna do well. So the player matters more than the tank. Obviously, the worse the tank, the worse it is for you as well. And the worse you can recommend this to an average player as well, because obviously, if you're a super unicum tryhard, you're gonna do well with this vehicle. You do well in any tank. The problem is, if you are a average player or above average player and you decide to spend your money on tier 10, what would it be this thing? I mean, the 121B is equally nonsensical in terms of buying a usefulness. However, why would it be this thing? It's hard to play. It doesn't offer you anything that no other tank can offer you. You know, you can have a Leopard, you can have an STB, you can have a D50M, you can have a Patton, you can have a FE422, you can have any of them, and they will do better. And that's why these two are down here. Because they can't do anything. And even against a heavy tank, you're gonna lose, which means you need more skill to make up for that, which you don't have, probably. So for an average player, especially, this thing is the worst piece of equipment at tier 10 that you can obtain, and that is why it's down here, because it absolutely sucks, and you have to pay for the suck.